A new report by congressional Democrats warns of deepening Russian interference throughout Europe and concludes that even as some Western democracies have responded with aggressive countermeasures, President Donald Trump has offered no strategic plan to bolster their efforts or safeguard the U.S. from again falling victim to the Kremlin's systematic meddling. The report is the first from Congress to comprehensively detail Russian efforts to undermine democracy since the 2016 presidential election. It wastes no time in calling out Trump personally for what it describes as a failure to respond to Russia's mounting destabilization activities in the U.S. and worldwide. The report was obtained by the Associated Press in advance of its public release Wednesday. Never before has a U.S. president so clearly ignored such a grave and growing threat to U.S. national security, the report warns. No Republicans on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee signed on to the 200-plus page report released by Sen. Ben Cardin of Maryland, the committee's top Democrat. But even without GOP backing, the report's recounting of Russian operations in 19 European nations foreshadows the still unpublished Senate Intelligence Committee's bipartisan inquiry into Russia's role during the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Cardin said in a statement that he commissioned the report so Americans can see the true scope and scale of Russian President Vladimir Putin's efforts to undermine democracy. President Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, asked a federal court Wednesday to void the Justice Department's appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller and charges Mueller's office filed against him, elevating Trump supporters' attempts to discredit the probe into Russian. President Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, asked a federal court Wednesday to void the Justice Department's appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller and charges Mueller's office filed against him, elevating Trump supporters' attempts to discredit the probe into Russian. While President Trump stands practically idle, Mr. Putin continues to refine his asymmetric arsenal and look for future opportunities to disrupt governance and erode support for the democratic and international institutions that the United States and Europe have built over the last 70 years, Cardin said. Cardin's inquiry lays blame directly on Putin for a relentless assault to undermine democracy and the rule of law in Europe and the United States. Concerned that Trump has failed to identify Russian aggression as a national rallying point, the report urges a stronger congressional voice in pro-democracy efforts and funding. The report calls for committee hearings and other bipartisan efforts to aid European nations in countering Russian aggression. Special counsel Robert Mueller reportedly has asked President Donald Trump's attorneys about whether and how the president could be interviewed by investigators from Mueller's office. The president's lawyers apparently are also exploring options short of a live interview, such as having the president. Special counsel Robert Mueller reportedly has asked President Donald Trump's attorneys about whether and how the president could be interviewed by investigators from Mueller's office.